Well, this is maybe a little bit odd and a little complex, but I hope you'll hang with me for just a minute. If you were reading this week in your daily Bible reading, you came across a very familiar story, the story of the enslavement of the Israelites. There was a Pharaoh who rose to power, who did not know of Joseph. He didn't remember of this Hebrew, this son of Israel, who had rescued Egypt and saved them. And because he didn't know the story in the past, he became worried and fearful of the Israelites, their growing numbers, these Hebrew slaves that might join with the enemy. And so he decreed that all the male children born would be killed. In a generation, it is the intention of this Pharaoh to wipe out Israel. They will be no more. But God, it would seem, had a different plan. He would save Israel and redeem them. Moses, one of those destined to be killed, was spared and saved. His mother hid him as long as she could, and then placed him in a basket in the river among the reeds. And he was discovered by Pharaoh's daughter. His name, Moses, was given to him, and we're told it means drawn out. But I have always wondered why an Egyptian princess gave a boy a Hebrew name. Now, maybe she did. Maybe that's exactly how it went down. I'm not saying it didn't, but it sounds strange to me because the Hebrew word drawn out is not exactly Moses. I don't know if you know that, but I paid lots of money to learn it. The Hebrew word for drawn out sounds very close to Moses. But there is also another word that sounds like Moses. It's Egyptian. You'll find it in Thutmose. Moses. That word means child. So both these words that sound very similar and are both present in the text, they're just sort of hard to find. This child drawn out the river. I will name him a child drawn out of the river. That's a little bit complex, but my daughter's name is McKenna, spelled M-A-K-I-N-N-A. But you've heard of McKenna before, right? But McKenna probably has the only spelling of McKenna that way, because her name actually comes from Shauna's maiden name, Mackie, M-A-K-I. See, people make up names. That's what people do. They take things that are familiar and they give them to their children. They change the spellings. They make up names. And so, this child, drawn out of the river, Moses, is a child of two worlds. And that is clear as it jumps off the page. This is a child born a Hebrew slave, claimed by royalty. It's a powerful image because my mind really likes hanging on to this reality of this child saved, born out, drawn from this water, because you see, when I am baptized, I am drawn out of the water and I become a child of God. And I love this image. God, through baptism, is doing something amazing. I am a child of two worlds. I was born here in sin, destined for death, but claimed by a loving Father who makes me an heir of heaven. Now, you don't have to treat anything that I just said as gospel, because it's not. It's not. I just wanted for a moment for you to think about how fascinating it is that God hides things in Scripture that are powerful images that until we slow down, we don't see. I was reminded of that again as Jesus talked in parables. So you read Matthew's explanation. He's hiding truths that were hidden from the beginning of the world. He's revealing them, but they're hidden. So when I see this amazing, powerful metaphor, this image, this name given to this child, this one spared from slaughter, my heart just hangs on to it for a moment. And as I turn the page, I keep those words in my head, child drawn out. And so, when God speaks in that burning bush moment, it is a remarkable encounter. One destined from I don't know when, because God is always at work. So I hope that you read this story, or at least you remember it from when you were a child, that you spent some time this week reflecting on this burning bush, because I hope that you'll indulge me again. I want to read part of it to you, but I want to invite you to hear it personally. So I'm going to do something a little weird. I'm going to change 2 words. I'm going to change Moses to child drawn out. And I'm going to let just God speak. Moses is going to disappear for a moment. And the original, as he speaks about his Israelites, these children of his in captivity in Egypt, I'm going to let that fade for just a moment. And I'm going to read to you the words that God spoke. And I want you to listen to them this morning. Child drawn out, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. I have indeed seen the misery of my people. I have heard them crying out. And I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them. So now, go. I am sending you. Say, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. So much of Scripture, so much history, so many things happen, and they're trying to help us understand a larger reality, a true reality, where God, as a loving creator, a loving father, is desperate to have us hear him. I believe he speaks, and he is longing for us to hear him. And Jesus speaks, and when he does, he speaks truth. It's hidden, but it's right there to be seen. If you will open your ears and hear, if you will open your eyes and see. One of those truths is hidden here in plain sight. God has, since the beginning, been planning a rescue of his creation, of his people, his children. That rescue in Exodus carried out by Moses, but the true reality carried out by Jesus, his Son, God in the flesh, whose death we are baptized into. Through water, we are buried with him. I find it interesting in the story of Moses, if he wasn't a baby in a basket, that thing would have looked more like a coffin. It's an interesting image. through water, we are baptized. And then we are drawn out to life. We are rescued through Jesus. And I want to make sure I say this really clearly. It's being recorded, so I'm in a lot of trouble now. We are rescued through Jesus alone. There is no other way to be rescued. There is no other way. There is no other plan. And it has been this way since the beginning. It was God's plan through Jesus. It's why Jesus speaks so plainly in the Gospels about his death and his resurrection. This has always been the plan. Over and over again, we are told from the beginning, this is God's plan. All the events recorded in the Gospels are not happening to Jesus because of the plans of men. His death may be carried out by men, but all of it is the work of God. It is his work. Jesus reminds us in Matthew chapter 18, if you read that this week, he speaks about the destructive power of sin that is present in the world. That we are condemned when we bring suffering, we participate in sin and we bring suffering on God's children. We are condemned. Humanity causes one another to suffer greatly because of sin. And we bind judgment on ourselves. This is not a God saying, you did that, you're guilty. This is us knowing we are guilty because we sin and we know it. We bind judgment on ourselves. But God is not okay with that future. You condemned. He's not okay with it. And so Jesus, in that same chapter, Matthew chapter 18, tells this story to reveal a truth hidden in plain sight. What do you think? If a man owns 100 sheep and one of them wanders away, will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go to look for the one that wandered off? And if he finds it, I tell you the truth, he is happier about that one sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off. In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should be lost. The story reveals the heart of God, who will not let one. This is really important. He is not willing to let one be lost. When one is lost, God mounts a rescue operation, and he goes to seek the lost one. And through Christ, God is carrying about that rescue operation. Moses, the shepherd, reveals the heart of God. A shepherd called to rescue because God is a shepherd in search of his lost sheep. He is searching for the lost and the broken, the enslaved children that he longs to draw out of sin. The sin that we so easily find ourselves trapped in. And we cannot rescue ourselves. It is only God who can draw us out. This is done not through our worthiness. This is not done through our self-purification. If you're working on some things so that you can work up to asking God to rescue you, it doesn't work that way. It is done only Only through Jesus. We are rescued through God. He is the one true Son of God, the true representation and image of God. And so he reveals exactly the heart of God, that not one would be left, that he is about rescue. I couldn't help this week when I read these words, but to see the image of the King, the image of Jesus and his mission among us. Did you read this psalm this week? O Lord, the King rejoices in your strength. How great is his joy in the victories you give. You have granted him the desires of his heart and have not withheld the request of his lips. You welcomed him with rich blessings and placed a crown of pure gold on his head. He asked you for life, and you gave it to him, length of days forever and ever. Through the victories you gave, his glory is great. You have bestowed on him splendor and majesty. Surely you have granted him eternal blessings and made him glad with the joy of your presence. For the King trusts in the Lord. Through the unfailing love of the Most High, he will not be shaken. Your hand will lay hold on all your enemies. Your right hand will seize your foes. At the time of your appearing, you will make them like a fiery furnace. In his wrath, the Lord will swallow them up, and his fire will consume them. You will destroy their descendants from the earth, with their posterity from mankind. Though they plot evil against you and devise wicked schemes, they cannot succeed. For you will make them turn their backs when you aim at them with drawn bow. Be exalted, O Lord, in your strength. We will sing and praise your might. We claim Christ as King, and it is the victory of Christ that brings us life. The psalm reminds us that God is granting the King his request. Do you know what his request is? That not one of these that he has been given would be lost. That was his prayer. His request is that you would be blessed instead of him. That as Jesus hung and died on the cross, he asked that God would forgive. God does not withhold from the King his request. He grants his request, which is that you would know you are loved, that you would know you are claimed, that you would know you are born of water and spirit, that you are a child of God, that you are forgiven, that you are blessed, you are anointed, you are empowered, you are a precious treasure to God. Those are the things that Jesus has requested that God do, that he would transform you. All of this happens not because we are worthy. In fact, we're more like Moses, unwilling. But God, through Christ, still blesses, because he is the Holy One of God. And he claims you for his Father. You are rescued. You are now drawn out. You are renamed his child. And all of this in rebirth, in being born again, in water. Isn't it amazing what God does? We may not understand all of it, but what we do understand is that God, through Jesus, is drawing out his children from this sinful world. He is rescuing them. That through Jesus, we are claimed and we are extended the right to be called child of God. It is your right through Jesus. And He is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Jacob, and of your fathers from long ago. He is a rescuer who has drawn you from the pit and saved you from sin. And He has given you a new heart, the heart of Christ. And together, as His people, we are the assembled together, the church, the called out. And we are about one thing, the mission of Jesus. We are the continuation of that work. We may not embrace it just as Moses didn't embrace it, but we are the one who is commanded, now go, I am sending you. Because you represent the will of God, that not one child would be left. I want to ask if you will remember your commitment, your decision that you made. If you were baptized, I want to ask that you remember that commitment, that you chose to reject sin, that you chose to embrace the life offered in Jesus, the forgiveness that comes through Him, to be empowered by His Spirit to live for God. That was the commitment you made. And if you've never made that commitment, I really want to encourage you this morning to think about what it means to be born a child of God, to reject sin, to recognize that death of self, that's where it begins. That life comes only from God. Will you join me in being the drawn out, the called out, and this is where it gets complicated, the sent? You are sent. If you would like to profess Christ and claim Him, we want to invite you to come forward and do that. If you are a believer, a child of God, and you are struggling with your commitment to Christ, we want to pray for you and encourage your heart. Whatever your need is, I pray that you'll make that need known as we stand together and sing.